Hi, this is Phil Shapiro in Tacoma Park. I have been reading a really interesting book, Articulating Design Decisions by Tom Greever, published by O'Reilly Media. This is not your typical computer book. It's a book about human psychology and communication skills and the art of design and making the workplace less stressful for designers and also for product managers and everybody. So Tom Greever is a designer, and this book came from a presentation he gave at some conference where he gave this topic and he didn't think it was going to be of much interest. And then there was a huge amount of interest in this, and he ended up deciding to write this book. This over here is a drawing of Mount Everest. And I work at a public library and I read a lot about things, and I try and remember the things I read. I read a few years ago about how a team of climbers died on Mount Everest near the summit because of a design decision that was made by the person who designed their tent. And I'm not going to tell the whole stories right here in the book review. You can read the story. I'm going to leave it in the YouTube comment, that's YouTube description for this video, this book review video. But I just wanted to show this here, that design decisions can be fatal. If you make a wrong decision, it can have consequences. The consequences can be very, very large. So I pulled out this quote over here. This is from the early part of the book, and Tom Greever is explaining about how he came to the realization about the importance of designers having better communication skills about design. So let me read you this quote. "But that's not the important part of the story. What struck me about this whole thing was the amount of effort that it was going into just communicating design ideas to one person. The amount of time the other designers spent actually creating the mock-up was nothing compared to the time and energy that went into finding the best ways of communicating them. It was clear to everyone, if we didn't get approval for our designs, our projects won't see the light of day. Communicating about the designs was more important than the designs themselves." So this is an important realization. We must have designers be able to explain why they made certain design decisions. Later on in the book, I like this little part. He talks about the ego of designers. In some ways, there's an arrogance that prevents us from being truly productive with people outside of our own peers. We don't always see the other stakeholders on our project as knowing anything valuable about design. We don't trust their instincts the way we trust our own. After all, we're the experts. We were hired to design things because that's what we're good at. Why should the managers care? Can't they trust us? Designers make a lot of decisions based purely on intuition. In fact, our intuition is really good at solving design problems in an elegant and simple way. We're wired to think visually, to organize elements logically, and to pay careful attention to the details. The problem is that because designer is subjective, we don't always have to understand how our intuition connects to the problem at hand. We're unable to adequately tell other people why we did what we did. So this is so fascinating. This book, this one book, is helping designers connect up two parts of the brain. The part of the brain that's dealing with intuition and visual stuff, and then the part that is able to, the rationale, language part of the brain. So this is a really fascinating goal, and I think Tom Greever succeeds. In fact, in the early part of the book, he says this book is intended for designers and project managers and developers who work with designers. But let me tell you who else this is for. This book is for high school students and anybody else who cares about a humane workplace. Because when you have designers that are not able to communicate well, then the people who supervise them could treat them poorly. And you have a designer falling asleep at night by crying because their design talent was unappreciated, but their design talent was unappreciated because they were not able to communicate why they made their design decisions, their articulation skills. So this book, do you know what I like about it? Makes the world more humane. That's what I like about this book. Later on in the book, he says, be charming. So this is advice for designers. One challenge that we designers face in receiving feedback is we simply don't have a good rapport with non-designers. When we go into a meeting with a stakeholder, we might assume the worst, prepare for a battle, and put up a guard to protect us against an onslaught of negative feedback. We can become defensive, which can be reflected in our posture and response. Yet the surest way to get what we want, the best possible user experience, is to go into the meeting with an attitude that will convey our expertise. We have to be likable, approachable. That's good advice. So here it is. Here's Tom Greever. He's the interface design director at Guvcview, I guess it is, a front-end design. He lives in Illinois, and he has 5 kids. He must have a busy household. Anyway, here's the one last thing here in the book. I scanned the back of the book. This is the back of the book. I scanned it here just in case people are curious to read some of the background, the blurb on the back of the book. I wanted to throw this into the book review just so that people who are interested in signing out this book from their public library or buying a copy of a book can know a little bit more about it. But I'm giving this a big 2 thumbs up. Please buy a copy for your makerspace. Lend it out to friends. Homeschoolers, buy a copy of this. Lend it out in your homeschooling network. This is an interesting book. I found it fun to read. There's cartoons in here. There's famous sayings from people like George Bernard Shaw and Mark Twain. The layout is pretty layout. You guys did a good job, O'Reilly Media, and thank you, Tom Greever. I think you've made the world a little bit better with this book. I'm grateful. I bet you other people are going to be grateful too.